Buddhist Outlook on Daily Life, 11. Nina van Gorkom. 16. Right effort. Questioner, awareness arises when there are conditions. We cannot make awareness arise at will, awareness is in it. It would seem, therefore, that we cannot make an effort to have awareness. I know, however, that right effort, in plea, samvima, is one of the factors of the Eightfold Path. What is the characteristic of right effort? Nina, samvima or right effort is the cetasika, which is effort or energy, in plea, virya. The Visuddhimagga, 14:137, states about virya. Energy, virya, is the state of one who is vigorous, vira. Its characteristic is marshalling, driving. Its function is to consolidate connascent states. It is manifested as non-collapse. Because of the words bestirred, he strives wisely, Anguttara 1:15-48, its proximate cause is a sense of urgency, or its proximate cause is grounds for the initiation of energy. When rightly initiated, it should be regarded as the root of all attainments. Virya is a type of dhamma, but is it not true that we take it for self? There are different kinds of virya. There is virya which is akusala and there is virya which is kusala. There is virya with dina, virya with sila, virya in samadhi and virya in vipassana, which is right effort of the Eightfold Path, samvima, and all these kinds of virya have different qualities. Samvima of the Eightfold Path arises together with samdhihi, right understanding, and samsati, right mindfulness. The development of vipassana is not merely being mindful of realities, without investigating their characteristics. The characteristics of dhamma and rupa must be thoroughly investigated over and over again until they are understood as only dhamma or only arupa, non-self. Samvima is an indispensable factor for the development of right understanding, because much courage and perseverance are needed for the investigation of realities in order to see them as they are. Samvima is the strength and vigor which arises each moment when there is awareness of dhamma or arupa and understanding of the reality which appears as being developed. Question: You said that when samdhihi investigates a characteristic of dhamma or rupa which is object of mindfulness, there is also samvima at that moment. But when there is very little awareness, should we not make an effort to have more? Nina, one may try to force the arising of awareness and try to catch the reality of the present moment, but then one does not know what sati is. Someone may take his attachment to sati for sati. It is true that right awareness can be developed, but this does not mean that one can force its arising. The factor which can condition its arising is understanding how vipassana is to be developed. If we know what the object of sati is, the dhamma or rupa which appears now, through one of the 6 doors, sati can arise and thus right understanding can gradually develop. When a citta with right mindfulness arises, there is at that moment right effort as well. Effort in vipassana is the strength or energy which is needed to investigate the reality which appears in order to understand it as it is, but we should remember that this effort is not self. Right effort of the Eightfold Path supports and strengthens right mindfulness and right understanding. Question: I have heard that the right effort of the Eightfold Path is the effort of the middle way. However, it is very difficult to walk the middle way. If we make too much of an effort, there is the notion of self again, and if we make no effort at all, we are lazy and heedless. I do not know how to walk the right way. Nina, if we think in terms of making too much or too little effort, then we do not realize that effort is dhamma and not self. We should not confuse samvima of the Eightfold Path with what we in conventional language usually mean by effort or trying. We do not have to think of making an effort, because when there is right mindfulness, there is at that moment samvima as well. Samvima arises, for example, when there is right mindfulness of seeing, hearing, thinking, visible object or sound which appears now. At such a moment there is courage and strength to be mindful of the reality which appears in order to develop a clearer understanding of its characteristic. Question: When sati does not arise, we cannot force its arising. Does this mean that nothing else can be done but waiting for the arising of sati? Nina, we should not waste our life and spend it in heedlessness. Thus, we should not neglect any way of kusala for which there is an opportunity. Dhyana, Samatha, and Vipassana are different ways of kusala we can apply ourselves to. When sati of Vipassana does not arise, we should not be lazy with regard to the other ways of kusala, because at the moments we do not develop kusala. We act, speak, and think with akusala siddhas, and thus we accumulate akusala time and again. We should not neglect the way of kusala, which is studying and considering the teachings. If we study the teachings and often consider what the Buddha taught about Dhamma and Rupa, there are conditions for the arising of sati at any moment. Question: when there are akusala siddhas, an effort should be made for kusala siddhas. The person who develops samadhi and the person who develops vipassana will make an effort for kusala in different ways. Is that right? Nina, samadhi is the development of calm by means of a suitable meditation subject. The kusala siddha which applies itself to samadhi is accompanied by right effort, samvima, but this kind of effort is different from samvima of the Eightfold Path. Samvima in samatha supports the siddha which develops calm in order to temporarily eliminate akusala siddhas. Samvima of the Eightfold Path supports the siddha and the accompanying mental factors, when there is right mindfulness of whatever reality appears, in order that it will be known as it is, as non-self. When there is akusala siddha, it can be realized as a type of nmi, arising because of conditions, not self. It is important to know what one is developing, samadhi or vipassana. When people say that they develop vipassana but do not want to be aware of akusala siddhas, they are not on the Eightfold Path. Most people are afraid of gross defilements, but does one realize the danger of latent tendencies which have been accumulated? Latent tendencies are dangerous. They are a condition for akusala siddhas to arise, they are the condition for us to be born again and again. Vipassana is the only way to eradicate all defilements and also the latent tendencies. Therefore, Vipassana is the highest way of kusala. Question: are there many moments of mindfulness needed before there can be a clear understanding of realities? Nina, in the beginning there cannot be a clear understanding of Dhamma and Rupa. We often mention the words Dhamma and Rupa, but we should keep in mind that these words denote realities which can be known through direct experience in our daily life. Seeing, hearing or thinking are Dhammas which can be directly known when they appear. Visible object, sound, or hardness are Rupas which can be directly known when they appear. We still think of a self who sees, hears, or thinks, but what we take for a person are in fact many different elements which can be known one at a time. Hearing is only an element, a type of Dhamma which experiences sound. Hearing cannot experience any other object. Through mindfulness of hearing, when it appears, we will learn that not a self hears, but that hearing hears. When sound appears, sound can be the object of mindfulness. There is at that moment no thought of the sound of a voice or the sound of a particular thing. When there is mindfulness of sound, its characteristic can be investigated, and this is the way to know sound as it is. A rupa which is experienced through the ears, not a thing which belongs to a person, not a self. Most of the time there is forgetfulness of realities. At the moment sati arises, there is mindfulness of one reality at a time, an Dhamma element or a Rupa element. Right understanding of Dhamma and Rupa can only develop at the moment there is mindfulness of their characteristics as they appear through the 6 doorways. Each moment of developing right understanding is extremely short, it arises and then falls away immediately. In the beginning there will only be a few moments of sati, and then there are bound to be countless moments of forgetfulness of realities. Many moments of sati are needed in order that the characteristics of Dhamma and Rupa can be investigated, but this should not make us discouraged. A moment of right mindfulness is never lost, it conditions mindfulness again, later on. It is unpredictable when sati will arise, because it is an it, non-self. The development of satipana is the only way to have less ignorance of realities. If we really see the danger of ignorance, it can be a condition for the arising of sati, and then there is right effort as well. It is important to know the difference between thinking about Dhamma and Rupa and the pa which directly knows the characteristic of the Dhamma or Rupa which appears. We may think that we know Dhamma and Rupa from direct experience, but is there a clear understanding of their different characteristics? Do we know already through direct experience the difference between the characteristic of Dhamma and the characteristic of Rupa? We have learned that Ma is the reality which experiences something and that Rupa is the reality which does not know anything. But now we should know their different characteristics through the direct experience, in being mindful of them. So long as there is doubt about the difference between Ma and Rupa, there cannot be a clear understanding of them. Question: I think that I can experience the impermanence of seeing. I know that it has fallen away when other phenomena appear. When, for instance, there is hearing, it is clear that seeing has fallen away. Nina: knowing impermanence by way of thinking is not the same as the direct understanding of the arising and falling away of realities. It is difficult to realize this. During the time we call in conventional language a moment, there are countless siddhas arising and falling away, succeeding one another. If one has not cultivated right understanding to a high degree, the impermanence of siddhas cannot be realized. Question: I see that it is important to know impermanence through direct experience in order to eliminate wrong understanding of realities. How can I ever be quick enough to know the impermanence of siddhas? Nina: this can never be known so long as there is a concept of self who tries to take hold of realities. Only Pa can realize the Ma or Rupa appearing at the present moment. Question: what can be known by direct experience when one has only just begun to develop insight? Nina: there can be mindfulness of a characteristic which appears through one of the 6 doors. But there cannot yet be a precise knowledge of Ma and Rupa. Someone told me that he assumed that everybody knew the difference between Ma and Rupa. For example, between the Ma which experiences sound, hearing, and the Rupa which is sound. He was wondering how anybody could have doubts about it. However, we should know the difference between theoretical knowledge and the Pa which has direct understanding of realities. Only when Pa has been developed in Vipassana can it have a precise knowledge of the reality which appears at the present moment. Question: there are many phenomena arising at the same time. In what order should I be aware of phenomena? Nina: it is true that there are many phenomena arising at the same time. For example, our body consists of many different rupas which arise and fall away. The rupas which are solidity, cohesion, temperature, and motion always arise together and fall away together. But only one characteristic can be experienced by siddha at a time, because siddha can have only one object at a time. Thus, when the siddha is accompanied by samsati, right mindfulness, there can be mindfulness of only one reality at a time. When we say that hardness appears or presents itself, it means that hardness is the object which siddha experiences at that moment. If sati accompanies the siddha, then sati has the same object as the siddha, it is mindful of that object. When there is mindfulness of the characteristic of hardness, Pa can realize it as only hardness, it is not a body, not a self, it is only a kind of rupa which is experienced through the door of the body. It is beyond control what the object of awareness will be. There is no rule which tells us of which phenomena there should be awareness and in which order. Direct understanding of realities by being mindful of them is not the same as theoretical knowledge of them, but theoretical knowledge of Ma and Rupa is a helpful foundation for the development of Vipassana. When we read the suttas, we notice that the Buddha spoke time and again about understanding Ma and Rupa which appear through the 6 doorways. We read, for example, in the Kindred Sayings, 4, Salyattanavagga, Kindred Sayings on Sense, 3rd 50, CHV, PAR 146, helpful, that the Buddha said to the monks, I will teach you, monks, a way that is helpful for Nibbana. Do you listen to it? And what, monks, is that way? Herein, monks, a monk regards the I as impermanent. He regards objects, eye consciousness, eye contact as impermanent. That pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral feeling experienced, which arises by eye contact, that also he regards as impermanent. He regards the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, he regards mind, mind states, mind consciousness, mind contact as impermanent. The pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling or neutral feeling, arising therefrom, he regards that also as impermanent. This, monks, is the way that is helpful for Nibbana. Would thinking about realities as impermanent lead to Nibbana? We cannot become detached from the concept of self merely by thinking. Only the Pa which directly understands the characteristics of Ma and Rupa which appear at the present moment can see them as they really are, as impermanent and non-self. If we mistakenly think that we know the truth already, we are not able to understand the real meaning of this sutta. Why would the Buddha time and again stress that the I, seeing consciousness and visible object, that all realities appearing through the six doors are impermanent? In order to remind people to be aware of Ma and Rupa, so that one day they would see realities as they are. Question: I find it difficult to know from direct experience the difference between the Ma which experiences sound and the Rupa which is sound. How can I ever know the difference between Ma and Rupa unless I make an effort? Or would it be better in the beginning to ignore the difference between Ma and Rupa, such as hearing and sound, and rather know different characteristics of Rupa which appear through the body sense? Nina: all Mas and Rupas which appear through the different doorways should be known. We should not select any particular kind of Ma or Rupa as object of awareness. That would not be the right path. Hearing can be known and sound can be known as well, they are both realities which each have a different characteristic. We cannot, however, have a clear understanding of realities within just a short time. The characteristics of Ma and Rupa are clearly distinguished from each other when the first stage of insight knowledge is attained. Even this stage, which is only a beginning stage, cannot be attained unless there has been mindfulness over and over again of Ma and Rupa. Could we say that we know already different kinds of Ma and Rupa as they appear through the different doorways? Are we no longer confused as to the doorway through which an object is experienced? Question: no, I certainly cannot say that. Nina: how could there be a precise knowledge of realities when their characteristics are not yet known from direct experience, as they appear one at a time through eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body sense, and mind door? All these considerations help us to realize how little we know. If we wrongly assume that we know realities as they are, we cannot develop right understanding. But when we see how little we know, we are more truthful, and then we may be able to begin to develop right understanding. When right understanding develops, we begin to realize the difference between theoretical knowledge of realities and the Pa which directly knows the characteristics of phenomena when they appear one at a time. We realize that a few moments of awareness are not enough, that we need to be mindful of Ma and Rupa countless times in order to become more familiar with their characteristics. In that way, a more precise knowledge of Ma and Rupa can be developed. Question: in the Visuddhimagga, in the definition of effort, it is said that its proximate cause is a sense of urgency or grounds for the initiation of energy. What can urge us to be mindful now? Nina: the Buddha pointed out that it is a matter of urgency for us to develop right understanding of realities. He encouraged people to be mindful, at any time and any place. He pointed out the sorrows of past lives, of the present life, and of the lives in the future which will occur if one has not made an end to rebirth. In the Thiragth, Vajjita, Canto 2, 168, we read about Vajjita who attained Arahatship. The text states: a traveler I these long ages past, and round about the realms of life I've whirled. One of the many folk and blind as they. No Aryan truths had I the power to see. But earnestly I strove for light and calm. And now all shattered lies the endless way. All future borns abolished utterly. Now comes never more rebirth for me. We do not know how long we will be in this plane of existence, nor whether we will be able to develop insight in the next life. When we read in the scriptures about birth, old age, sickness, and death, and about the dangers of rebirth, we can be reminded to be aware of realities now, at this moment. When we see that mindfulness now is urgent and that it should not be put off, it can help us to be less neglectful. Samvima, right effort, is an indispensable factor of the Eightfold Path. It supports and strengthens right understanding and right mindfulness. One needs vigor and courage to be mindful without delay and to consider and investigate the characteristics of Ma and Rupa untiringly, so that right understanding can grow. Realities such as seeing, visible object, hearing, sound, feeling or thinking appear countless times during the day, yet often there is no mindfulness but forgetfulness of realities. If there is no mindfulness now, will there ever be the wisdom which sees things as they are? Question: you say that thinking about the dangers of rebirth will remind people not to be heedless. I doubt whether it is helpful to be frightened by the thought of hell. Nina, all of the Buddha's teachings are most valuable. That is why we should continue reading the scriptures. For different situations in life we will find in the teachings the right words which will encourage us to be mindful. Often we are heedless and forgetful of realities, but when we read about the danger of rebirth in hell it reminds us to continue to develop right understanding. We should not be frightened by the thought of hell, that is akusala. But we should remember that only if vipassana is developed and enlightenment is attained will we escape the danger of an unhappy rebirth. When we see the extent of the defilements we have accumulated and are still accumulating, we can be urged to develop right understanding now, at this moment. 17. Right mindfulness. Questioner, the wisdom which sees realities as they are can only develop when there is mindfulness. Is there anything we can do in order to have mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa, so that later on Pa which knows them as they are will arise? Nina, if one wants to do something in particular in order to have mindfulness, one is led by clinging and then Pa cannot develop. Some people think that right mindfulness of the Eightfold Path is something other than attending to the characteristic of Dhamma or Rupa which appears now, in daily life. That is the wrong understanding of mindfulness. At this moment you are sitting. Is there hardness? Can you experience it? Question, yes, I can experience it. Nina, hardness is only a kind of rupa which appears through the body sense. We usually think of a thing or the body which is hard and we are forgetful of the characteristic of hardness which appears. When there is mindfulness of the characteristic of hardness which appears we do not think of a thing or of the body which is hard, and at that moment Pa can investigate the reality which is hardness. In that way hardness can be known as only a kind of rupa which appears through the body sense, no self. Hardness is an ultimate reality with its own unchangeable characteristic which can be directly experienced without the need to think about it or to name it hardness or rupa. Ultimate realities are different from concepts which are not real in the ultimate sense. When we think of a thing which is hard or the body which is hard, the object of thinking is a concept. The thinking itself, however, is an ultimate reality, a type of Dhamma. Anything which is real, Dhamma and Rupa, are the objects of right mindfulness and right understanding of the Eightfold Path. The right understanding of ultimate realities can eventually lead to detachment from the wrong view of self. When a reality such as hardness appears, there is also a reality which experiences hardness. It is not self who experiences hardness, but a kind of Dhamma, different from the rupa which is hardness. The experience of hardness is an ultimate reality with its own characteristic which can be object of mindfulness when it presents itself, and then Pa can investigate it in order to know it as it is. Thus, Sati is not forgetful, but mindful of the characteristics of Dhamma and Rupa as they appear one at a time through the 6 doors. At the moment of mindfulness of a reality Pa can investigate it, and in this way it will eventually be known as it is. We may be inclined to think that we have to do something special in order to have mindfulness and that we then can experience Dhamma and Rupa as they are, but this is not so. Right understanding of what Sati is and what the object of Sati is, namely an ultimate reality, can condition the arising of Sati, and then Pa can gradually develop. In order to know what Sati is and what the object of Sati we have to listen to the good friend in Dhamma who can explain the development of right understanding. We have to study the Dhamma and to consider it carefully. Samsati, right mindfulness, is one of the factors of the Eightfold Path, and it arises together with Samdaihi, right understanding. Samsati is mindful of a characteristic of Dhamma or Rupa, and Samdaihi realizes it as it is. Question, but mindfulness has to be cultivated. Do we not have to do certain things and abstain from other things we are used to doing in daily life, in order to have more mindfulness? Nina, studying the teachings, pondering over them, learning about the right way of practice, knowing the benefit of right understanding, these are conditions for the arising of mindfulness. When we have understood that mindfulness arises because of conditions, that it is an it, non-self, and when we have found out for ourselves that we cannot induce mindfulness, we will refrain from doing special things in order to have more mindfulness. Question, I know what you mean. When I sit still at home and I try to be mindful, I cannot be mindful. Nina, when there is right understanding, we realize that the aim of Vipassana is knowing ourselves, our daily life. Therefore, we do not act in a way which is unnatural to ourselves in order to have more sati. We do not force ourselves to sit still for a long time and wait for sati to arise. Is sitting still and doing nothing the natural thing for you to do? Question: No, I usually read or write, or I stand up and walk around and do many different things. Nina, so, if you want to know your daily life, should you force yourself to do something which is not natural to you? Question: No, I see that I will know myself better if I do the things I have accumulations for and which I am used to doing. However, I wonder how we can know realities as they are, since a moment of sati is extremely short. Nina, a moment of sati is extremely short, it arises and falls away with the citta. Sati is impermanent and non-self. Sati arises and falls away, but it can arise again when there are conditions. Thus characteristics of Dhamma and Rupa can gradually be known. If people do not realize that sati arises because there are the right conditions for its arising, and if they try to induce it, they will not know what sati is. In that case pa cannot be developed. Question: I notice that when I do good deeds, mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa arises more often. Are good deeds a condition for mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa? Nina, good deeds are beneficial and they are a condition to have less akusala sittas, but we should not assume that there is necessarily more mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa while we perform them. The arising of sati depends on conditions, and there is no self who can regulate its arising. We should not mistakenly believe that there cannot be awareness also of akusala sittas. After akusala siddha has fallen away, siddha with sati may arise, and then also the reality which is akusala can be object of mindfulness. The Buddha said that all kinds of realities can be known as they are. Mindfulness should not be limited to certain times, places or occasions. Question: But is it not important for those who begin to develop mindfulness to be in a special place? Nina, it is right understanding which is important. In Vipassana we come to know 6 worlds: the world appearing through the eyes, through the ears, through the nose, through the tongue, through the body sense, through the mind door. We should learn to distinguish between these 6 worlds in order to know the truth. Only one world at a time is object of mindfulness. When we think of a person, an animal, or a tree, there is a concept of a whole, and we do not distinguish between these 6 worlds. When there is mindfulness of a reality such as visible object, which is the world appearing through the eyes, or hardness, which is the world appearing through the body sense, we learn to understand the difference between thinking of concepts and mindfulness of ultimate realities as they appear one at a time. In order to develop right understanding of realities, we have to know the difference. The 6 worlds are everywhere, no matter where we are. There should be mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa, which are those 6 worlds, in order to know the truth. Question: In the beginning, when there is very little awareness, we are likely to become impatient. We think that there never will be any result. Would it not be helpful to be in a quiet place, such as a meditation center? Nina, when we begin to develop Vipassana we are anxious to have immediate results. We want to experience Dhamma and Rupa as they are and to eradicate defilements without delay. People may become tense in their effort to control awareness, and thus they deviate from the right path. If they are on the wrong path, they do not have right awareness and can therefore not develop right understanding. In Vipassana one develops right understanding of one's daily life. I heard someone say that in Vipassana he is tearing himself away from normal life. He calls his life without awareness his normal life, and his life with awareness his meditation life. If we separate mindfulness from our daily life and consider it as something apart from it, we are not on the Eightfold Path. For many of us it is difficult to see that the Eightfold Path is the development of understanding of our daily life. The Eightfold Path is the middle way. When our understanding is more developed, we will realize what the middle way is. Walking the middle way means not forcing ourselves to things for which we have no accumulations. If we have no accumulations for a secluded life, it is clear that such a life is not our real life, and thus we should not force ourselves to it on the assumption that pa will develop more quickly. There is no self who could hasten the development of pa. Question: I still think that there are certain conditions which are not favorable to the development of mindfulness and which should be avoided. For example, reading books such as novels. If we read books which are not about Dhamma and which do not contribute to the improvement of society, the reading is not helpful for the arising of kusala siddhas. Should we not stop reading books like that if we want to have more awareness? Nina: when we read books which are not helpful for kusala, it shows that we have accumulations for reading them. It would be wrong to assume that in order to be mindful we should stop reading them. This would not help us to know ourselves, and it would make us believe that we have no more akusala siddhas. Not our desire to control sati but right understanding of what the object of sati is can condition its arising. Whatever reality appears, no matter whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, kusala or akusala, can be the object of sati. When there is awareness of the dhamma and rupa which appear while we are reading, we are on the middle way, we are on the way to know ourselves better. There can be awareness of seeing as a type of dhamma, of knowing the meaning of what we read as another type of dhamma. We may be absorbed in what we read and like or dislike may arise, these are different types of dhamma again. Many types of dhamma and rupa may appear while we are reading. If there is mindfulness of what appears at the present moment, also while we are reading, there will be less attachment to the concept of self. If we have accumulations for music or for painting, we should not suppress them in order to have more mindfulness. While we play music or while we paint, dhamma and rupa appear through the 6 doors. Why can there not be mindfulness of them? In this way we will understand that our life consists of dhamma and rupa. We do not have to go to a secluded place in order to look for dhamma and rupa, they appear already. Question: but if we read unwholesome literature or take alcoholic drinks, will it not hinder awareness? I doubt whether it is the middle way to give in to these things. It seems that there are then more akusala siddhas instead of less. Nina: akusala siddhas are bound to arise, but sati can be mindful of the akusala siddha. At the moment of mindfulness there is kusala siddha instead of akusala siddha. It is sati which can prevent us from unwholesome courses of action, akusala kama patha, through body, speech, and mind. We can learn that even a moment of mindfulness, be it only a short moment, is very valuable, that it bears great fruit, because during that moment right understanding is being developed. We will have less ignorance of our defilements, we will learn that they are types of dhamma which arise because of conditions. Someone who has developed pa to the degree that it can realize dhamma and rupa as they really are could become a satpana, stream winner, even shortly after akusala siddha appeared. When insight has been highly developed, it can know any reality which appears as it is, even if it is akusala. Pa can understand whatever reality appears as impermanent, dukkha and anat. But only one of these 3 characteristics can be known at a time. Wisdom is developed in daily life and enlightenment can occur in daily life. When we have learned from our own experience that the middle way which the Buddha taught is the only way leading to the end of defilements, our confidence in his teachings will increase all the time. We should not be afraid to be mindful of realities in daily life. Then we will know ourselves more and more until finally there will be no doubt that what we used to take for self are only dhamma and rupa. Question: sati has to be developed in daily life. But when I think of the day which has passed and I realize how little mindfulness there has been, I cannot help regretting the time I wasted. I know regret is unwholesome, but what can I do about it? Nina: people would like to have a great deal of sati, but they do not realize for what purpose they want it. Our aim should not be just awareness, without developing understanding, but it should be, to see realities as they are. At the very moment of awareness of the reality which appears, pa can investigate its characteristics so that eventually dhamma and rupa can be known as impermanent and non-self. If the reality of the present moment is regret, there can be awareness of that characteristic and it can be understood as it is. Only a type of dhamma which is conditioned. You will realize that all phenomena which arise, sati included, arise because of conditions and that it is of no use to regret the lack of sati. Then there will be less regret. Question: must sati always experience an object? I have heard people say that when sati is more developed it does not experience an object, that there is just stillness and peace. Nina, sati must experience an object. Sati is a sophana cetasika, beautiful mental factor, arising with a sophana citta. Each citta must experience an object and the cetasikas arising with the citta experience that object as well. Sati in samadhi experiences an object, it experiences the same object as the citta it accompanies, that is, a meditation subject which can condition calm. Sati in vipassana experiences an object, it experiences the same object as the citta it accompanies, that is, anma or arupa appearing at the present moment. Most people like to have tranquility and peace of mind. For what purpose do they want it? Deep in their hearts they do not want to know themselves, they just want tranquility, they cling to a concept of tranquility. What is peace of mind or tranquility? There should be a precise understanding of its characteristic. There is peace or calm with every kusala citta. When one is generous or one abstains from unwholesome deeds or speech there is calm. In samatha one can develop a higher degree of calm, but through samatha defilements are not eradicated. There is calm also with the kusala citta which develops vipassana. But the aim of vipassana is not the calm which is temporary freedom from defilements, the aim is the development of right understanding of realities. Through right understanding the wrong view of self and eventually all defilements can be eradicated. We should know the difference between the way of development and aim of samadhi and of vipassana. Vipassana is a kind of wisdom, it is the wisdom which knows things as they are. Question: the Buddha said that mindfulness should be cultivated at any time, even just before we fall asleep. We read in the Satipatthana Sutta, middle length sayings No 10, 49, that the Buddha said to the monks. And further, monks, a monk, in going forward and back, applies clear comprehension. In looking straight on and looking away, he applies clear comprehension, in bending and in stretching, he applies clear comprehension. In wearing robes and carrying the bowl, he applies clear comprehension. In eating, drinking, chewing, and savoring, he applies clear comprehension. In attending to the calls of nature, he applies clear comprehension, in walking, in standing, in sitting, in falling asleep, in waking, in speaking and in keeping silence, he applies clear comprehension. Thus he lives contemplating the body in the body. Can there be mindfulness while we are falling asleep? When we are in deep sleep and not dreaming there are bhavanga sittas, life continuum, sittas which do not experience an object impinging on one of the 6 doors, 50. When we are dreaming there can be kusala sittas, but mostly there are akusala sittas. Nina, if mindfulness has been developed there can be mindfulness just before we fall asleep. If there is no sati, there may be attachment, we are pleased to be comfortably lying down. Or perhaps we are worrying about many things which have happened during the day and thus aversion, dosa, arises. If there is mindfulness of the realities which appear just before we fall asleep, there are conditions for mindfulness as soon as we wake up. When we fall asleep we do not know whether we will wake up again. Death can come at any time. If we develop right understanding of realities in daily life, no matter what we are doing, there are conditions for mindfulness shortly before death. The sittas arising shortly before death condition the rebirth consciousness of the next life. The sutta can remind us to development mindfulness of Dhamma and Rupa at any moment, even just before we fall asleep. Question: the Buddha said that there should be mindfulness when speaking and mindfulness when keeping silence. I find it very difficult to be mindful when talking to other people. Nina, we may think that we cannot be aware in such situations when we still assume that in order to be aware we have to do something special. When you are walking, are there no realities appearing? Question: yes, there is, for example the characteristic of hardness which may appear, or the characteristic of motion or pressure. Nina, when you are talking is there no hardness, no motion? Question: yes, there is. Nina, can there not be hearing, seeing and thinking too when you are talking? Do you have to stop talking in order to notice that there is sound? Question: no, It can be noticed while one is talking. Nina, can there not, while you are speaking, be awareness of sound, and can it not be known as only sound, a kind of replay? While we are speaking there are many different realities appearing at different moments. We do not have to stop speaking in order to be aware. When we are talking in a way which is not wholesome, when we are laughing and enjoying ourselves, we may think that we cannot be aware. But all realities are Nma and Rupa. Why can there not be awareness of them? When you are in your office, do you often use the telephone? Are you mindful when you pick up the receiver and speak? Question: when the telephone rings and I lift up the receiver, there are so many things happening one after the other. It is difficult to be mindful in the office. Nina, are there no realities appearing through the 6 doors? You cannot be mindful all the time, but if you have right understanding of what sati is and what the object of sati, it may sometimes arise, even when you are in your office. There may be mindfulness when you take up the receiver and start to speak, then you may become absorbed in what you want to say and there is forgetfulness instead of sati. But even if there are only a few moments of sati, they can condition the arising of sati again, later on. Sati can only be gradually accumulated. Question: some people think that when mindfulness has not yet been established it is necessary to be alone in order to cultivate it. Is that right? Nina, when there is mindfulness of a characteristic of Nma or Rupa we are actually alone, because at that moment we are not attached to someone or something. There are no people, only Nma and Rupa. Being alone in this sense has nothing to do with the place where we are. We do not have to break off our activities in order to be aware, because any reality appearing through one of the 6 doors can be the object of mindfulness. Even when we are with many people we can be alone with Nma and Rupa. When there is mindfulness of Nma and Rupa we will see that what we take for a person are only Nma and Rupa. If we were to go to a secluded place in order to be aware we might not be alone at all, we might instead be attached. We read in the Kindred Sayings, 4, Salyattanavaga, Kindred Sayings on Sense, 2nd 50, ch. 2, par 63, by Megajla. At Svath was the occasion, for this discourse. Then the Venerable Megajla came to see the Exalted One, seated at one side he thus addressed the Exalted One. Dwelling alone. Dwelling alone. Lord, is the saying. Pray, Lord, to what extent is one a dweller alone, and to what extent is one a dweller with a mate? There are, Megajla, objects cognizable by the eye, objects desirable, pleasant, delightful and dear, passion-fraught, inciting to lust. If a monk be enamored of them, if he welcome them, if he persist in clinging to them, so enamored, so persisting in clinging to them, there comes a lure upon him. Where there is a lure there is infatuation. Where there is infatuation there is bondage. Bound in the bondage of the lure, Megajla, a monk is called dweller with a mate. A monk so dwelling, Megajla, though he frequent jungle glades, hermitages, and lodgings in the forest, remote from sound, remote from uproar, free from the breath of crowds. Where one lodges far from humankind, places suitable for solitude, yet is he called dweller with a mate. Why so? Craving is the mate he has not left behind. Therefore is he called dweller with a mate. But, Megajla, there are objects cognizable by the eye, desirable, pleasant, delightful and dear, passion-fraught, inciting to lust. If a monk be not enamored of them, the lure fades away. Where there is no lure, there is no infatuation. Where there is no infatuation, there is no bondage. Freed from the bondage of the lure, Megajla, a monk is called dweller alone.